Hi and welcome to the first edition of Free Drop, a regular series of video blogs that we're going to be posting on our YouTube channel, just generally chatting about stuff that's going on across the globe in the world of golf, particularly picking up things that are happening on the PGA and European tours. I want to kick off this week by saying what a great start to the season it's been. Some fantastic golf already played, some amazing scoring, a glut of 59s, especially the 59 on the par 72 course. You can't get better than that really. And you've got to take your hats off to these players. Fantastic skills, fantastic mastery of their art, using remarkable technology that's giving them that edge that's pushing these scoring down. Just want to introduce a bit of a cautionary note into that and start a bit of a discussion with you about the impact of those low scores. I think we're potentially at risk of creating tournament golf that really is about long drive, pitch and putt. I like to see golf where the players are exposed to the test of golf, the true test of golf, where the design of the golf course has a big impact, the way the course is set up has a big impact, and the players aren't able to just simply take the driver or the 3-wood and smash the ball out as far as they can. And we're hearing today that the new Titleist Pro V1, a lot of the players are saying it's the most balanced ball they've ever used, it's given them extra distance, makes it quite scary really. And when you think that some of these players are able to miss the fairways by 30, 40, 50 yards and find a recovery shot, often reaching the green, putting out for par, often on the par 5s they're putting out for birdie. I don't think that can't be right. And I think we're getting to a stage in the game where we need to really think very hard. I don't think we should be looking at the technology. We live in an age where the manufacturers are able to use new alloys, new processing attempts at creating clubs that just make the ball fly. The ball manufacturers, they're putting huge amounts of R&D into the balls. The players, they're super fit and they take real advantage of that. But we really want our tournament golf to be a spectacle, to be a test of golf. And if we're not careful, we are just simply going to run down the path, particularly I think on the PGA Tour, of creating long drive pitch and putt competitions. So I'd like to go back and not affect the design of the courses particularly, but to look at the way they're set up. How's the rough cut? What sort of clearance under the trees are the players being gifted here? Are the bunkers really hazards? Because I don't really think that for a lot of these players, much in the way of what we would recognise as a hazard actually is a hazard. And they don't mind being in the bunkers, they don't mind being 180 yards out from the greens in the bunkers, they don't mind being in the greenside bunkers, and often they're using these as bailout zones. So we've got to look at how we actually make that penal. It cannot be right that you can hit the ball 300 yards off the tee and end up off the fairway, and you're just simply strolling down and just picking out your 7-iron, your 8-iron, pitching wedge or whatever, and just dropping it on the green and putting out. So from our point of view, and we're going to come back to this through the season, let's not take it away from the players. The players are absolutely brilliant at their art, but we really need to be saying we should be setting this up so these players are really being tested. I think there's a real challenge in there. The TV broadcasters at the moment, they're showcasing golf brilliantly, but I think there's a real risk that the viewing public might just start to think, do you know what, this is quite boring. Every week we just switch on and it's the same players doing the same things on courses that are looking a bit identikit. So let's think that through, and we'll come back to it as we go through the season. The next thing I want to talk about is winter golf. I think we're blessed, to be able to go out and play in the winter. Most of us still enjoy going out as long as it's not too wet and too cold. But at the moment, with the cold snap, there's some education needed, I think. I don't think many of us really appreciate the true impact of playing golf on frozen ground. There's a body of thought, and there's quite a few greenkeepers who think this way, that it doesn't really cause too much damage. The frozen ground is what it is. Keep the course open and let the club members get on with it. Well, I sit completely differently to that. I think that we're causing significant damage to our courses, significant damage to the greens here. The grass is very, very vulnerable when it's frozen. About 80% of a grass stem is water. When it's frozen and you're walking on it, you're breaking it. You're changing the actual structure of the grass, and it's but below the ground, you're affecting the root structure and the future richness of the grass in the spring and the summer. So I think we really need to think about this when the the fairways and the greens are frozen. I would urge clubs to establish policies that just simply say until there's a full thaw, we're not going to play on this. And it's often at the sort of freeze thaw period where it's frozen overnight and the sun's up and the top of the frost is gone and the courses are open, when the greens particularly are at their most vulnerable. And we really need to think this through. In a few weeks' time, it'll be the spring, and the grass will start growing, and members start talking to each other, saying, the greens aren't as good as they were, the fairways aren't as good as they were. Well, I'll tell you this: if you've been playing on frozen fairways and your clubs have allowed you to, and you've been playing to frozen greens, then the state of them is largely your own fault. We need to think this through very carefully. We need to empower our greenkeepers. We need to ask our clubs to set clear frost policies. And I would strongly urge that we should not be playing on our courses, even to temporary greens, when there's a penetrating frost in the ground. And it's really only the advent of lightweight winter clothing that means we're out there anyway. A few years ago, when that clothing wasn't available, very few people played winter golf. So again, just a bit like the sort of long drive situation, the pitch and putt golf that I was talking about. Let's think about winter golf. Of course we want to be out there. Of course we want to be playing, but we really should only be doing that when the ground's not frozen. Certainly not in that freeze thaw condition. So come on clubs, empower your greenkeepers, give the head greenkeeper the opportunity to say, no, we're not playing on it today. There's going to be no thaw, and we'll have again another look at it in the morning. So that's a strong message I'm sending out there. Today we've got the Farmers Insurance over on the PGA Tour, the return of Tiger Woods. I think it's fantastic. I think having Tiger back out on a course, fit, competitive hopefully, can only be good for golf. There's no doubt that he's the greatest golfer of a generation. You can argue he's probably the greatest or one of the greatest golfers of all time. I don't buy into the debate about, can you compare him to Nicklaus, and can you go back, and compare him to, Palmer and players of that era. I think you should take them on the merits, take them, at their place in time, really. And, I genuinely think that Tiger, if he can stay fit, get that competitive edge back, he can win anywhere. I think there's some debate whether or not he can win a major. So many good players coming through, young players. It's like a tsunami of talent. But I do think that certainly, Tiger's more than capable of winning on the PGA Tour, certainly more than capable of coming over to Europe and picking up, competitions here as well. And who knows? It really wouldn't surprise me to see Tiger, certainly at the Masters, if he's fit and his golf's in decent nick. It really wouldn't surprise me to see Tiger finish in the top 10, and he can go from there. He relishes the British Open. It's at Birkdale. He's got all the shots for links golf. So I think we should celebrate. Get off the guy's back. Yeah, he carries a bit of baggage. He's coming back from some serious injuries, but fabulous golfer, fabulous for golf. Draws a lot of attention to the game, a lot of sponsorship, and you can't beat watching him. I still think even though he's not the player he was, give the guy a break, and fingers crossed. He has a great season and climbs those world rankings. And probably, I'd be absolutely amazed if he didn't win somewhere on the PGA Tour this year. Right, we're going to finish tonight by reflecting on something I think that probably one of the most unusual things I've seen in golf, really. The putting style of Bryson DeChambeau. I'm all for innovation. I'm all for making things look a bit different, but I can't really get my head around where this guy's coming from. Heard this week that the USPGA have said that his putter that he's using in that style is non-conforming. I've not yet heard why it's non-conforming, other than it probably just doesn't look right. It's odd, really. I think that clearly a very talented golfer has gone to such an obscure way of putting the ball, but I guess it takes all sorts. But again, it's such a strange thing to watch that you can't see that being mimicked by anybody else, and you can't see it being a style that becomes popular, certainly in the amateur game. And I think when you look back over the years at the truly great players, certainly you go back through the 70s and 80s, and look at the Watsons and the Nicklauses and the Trevinos and Faldos and players like that. These guys all putted in the traditional way, using very traditional styles and designs of putters. And you do wonder whether or not sometimes the manufacturers create equipment that just simply becomes a bit gimmicky, really. You know, we've had the Kirkland ball debacle. I mean, that seems to have now sort of been debunked. And we're seeing, certainly at the PGA golf show over in America this week, you know, huge amounts of innovation that, you know, just seems to me to be on a theme, really. Callaway have come through with their new Epic driver and woods, and there's no doubt, you know, the technology pushes the margins and pushes the boundaries. But just going back to DeChambeau, I really do think that you know, from a coaching perspective and from sort of, you know, his overall sort of game and the way that, you know, he would want to play, surely looking at the way that most tournaments are won, most of the great golfers have played, they haven't played like that. So come on, Bryson, sort yourself out, get yourself a mallet putter, and you know, find yourself a much more traditional and standard way of putting. That's the close for tonight. Hope that you've enjoyed the content. If you've enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll be back on a regular basis, putting up all sorts of content. We'll certainly be looking at doing some on-course videos, picking up on some, I think, you know, quite interesting ways of presenting the game to you. And as I say, we'll be back in a few days' time with another edition of Free Drop. See you now.